Today we are going to travel back in time and explore the intriguing stories of the ancient Greek and Roman historians. And we're going to analyze the concept of the Golden Age and the time of Atlantis. And we're also going to look at the planetary catastrophes that caused the Great Flood. And I will read to you from my book, The Golden Age of Ouranos. The Golden Age of Ouranos by Tess Clark. Contents: 1. Introduction. 2. The Golden Age. 3. Roman god Janus. 4. Ouranos equivalents in world mythologies. 5. Diodorus Siculus on the Titan rulers of Atlantis. 6. Cosmic timeline. 7. Book of Enoch the Prophet. 8. In the beginning, Uranus. 9. Conclusion. 10. Sources. 1. Introduction. The concept of an epoch called the Golden Age of Ouranos was syncretized with the reign of the planet Saturn. We take a look at the meaning of a Golden Age. It is common belief the Golden Age belongs to the era of Saturn's reign, a time when life was harmonious, when men did not age and had a peaceful death, and when mankind did not have to work. But the ancient historians, sacred texts, mystery schools, and cults tells of a different story. The scenario referred to as the Golden Age occurred before the reign of Saturn, and during the reign of the brown or red dwarf star, now unlit gas giant Uranus. I will refer to it as Ouranos, from the ancient Greek. Ouranos is also known as Taelus in Roman mythology, but fits the description of the primeval heavenly or sky god Janus. Aeon, god of eternal, unbound time, versus measurable time, after Saturn dethroned or castrated Ouranos, was associated with mystery schools of Dionysius, Cybele, Ophion, and Mithras. The god Phanes also fits this description. These gods or rulers, referred to by different names in various mystery schools and ancient texts, also embody the plasma sheath or red dwarf atmosphere, Birkeland currents, ether, the solid bronze dome, eternal spring, and pink or purple dawn. Why was Saturn the supreme deity by whose name the great and glorious Golden Age before the Deluge was named after if Saturn removed Uranus from his position as main ruler, the sun and deity? Why then is not Jupiter the one who would steal Uranus's place if Jupiter also dethroned or castrated Saturn and sent him away to Tartarus, the fringes of the solar system? Tartarus became the domain of Uranus after his dethronement by Saturn. Similarly, after the castration by Jupiter, Saturn, bound in chains with ice rings that appeared after the Deluge, was sent to Tartarus by Jupiter. In the most ancient Vedic literature, the Rig Veda, the god Vanua was Uranus, sky. He also embodied disease, Satya, as in Sati Yug or Satya Yuga, the time just before the Deluge, and Rita, justice. So the Yuga known as Satya belonged to Uranus and became syncretized with Saturn later on, same as the classic Greek mythology. The term Golden Age, with 5 ages, used by the classic Greek historians, Hesiod, in Works and Days, by extension denoted that peace and harmony prevailed and people did not have to work to feed themselves, for the earth provided food in abundance. They lived to a very old age with a youthful appearance, eventually dying peacefully, with spirits living on as guardians. The Roman historian Ovid, during the 7th century, spoke of the Golden Age as a time when there was no rule, no written laws, no punishment or oppression, and reduced the number of ages from 5 to 4: gold, bronze, silver, and iron. Ovid's version of the Golden Age was likely a prime source for the transmission of the myth of the Golden Age during the period when Western Europe had lost direct contact with Greek literature. Plato in Critulus clarified that the term referred to the golden race of humans who came first, who were the gods and noble of the royal descent. They were the lords and gods who ruled over and civilized mankind, who were previously called spirits or guardians. But after the Deluge, the lords round up and civilized humans within city walls, created the arts, agriculture, metallurgy, construction, and put the civilized humans to work. During the Golden Age, the uncivilized masses lived freely in huts spread throughout the forest and plains, without slavery, governments, jobs, taxes, the need to buy, sell, or use money, did not have to work to feed themselves, for the earth provided food in abundance. And if Saturn is the god of agriculture and harvest, it makes no sense that he would be the one ruling during the so-called Golden Age. Historian Diodorus Siculus, 90 BC to 30 BC, visited Egypt and spoke to the high priests about their ancient history. First, gods and heroes, who were half human, half gods, ruled Egypt for a little less than 18,000 years, where 1 year was 1 lunar month. So 18,000 months divided by 12, which is 12 months makes 1 year, equals 1,500 years. And the mortals have been kings over their country for a little less than 5,000 years, after the flood, down to 118th Olympiad, the time when we visited Egypt and the king was Ptolemy, who took the name of the new Dionysius. This was about 60 BC. The priest of the Egyptians, reckoning the time from the reign of Helios to the crossing of Alexander into Asia, which was around 323 BC, say that it was, in round numbers, 23,000 years or months. And as their legends say, the most ancient of the gods rule more than 1,200 years, and the later ones no less than 300. But since this great number of years surpasses belief, some men would maintain that in early times, before the movement of the sun had as yet been recognized, because Earth acquired a stable orbit around the sun only around 2,000 years ago, it was customary to reckon the year by the lunar cycle. Consequently, since 1 year consisted of 30 days, it was not impossible that some men lived 1,200 years, for in our own time, when our year consists of 12 months, some men live over 100 years. A similar explanation they also give regarding those who are supposed to have reigned for 300 years, for at their time, namely, the year was composed of the 4 months which comprises the seasons of each year, that is, spring, summer, and winter. And it is for this reason that among some of the Greeks, 3 years are called seasons, horoi, and that their yearly records are given the name of horographs. The pre-flood rulers, now the men of Egypt, he says, when ages ago they looked up at the firmament, and 2 gods were both eternal and first, namely, the sun and the moon, whom they called respectively Osiris and Isis. The heavenly fire was called Hephaestus. Osiris, many eyes, was called the Shining One, and represented as imitating the sky spangled with the stars, or Sirius. As Isis, as the horned moon or the cow, the Greeks called Osiris Dionysius. And besides these, there are other gods, they say, who were terrestrial, living on earth, having once been mortals, but who by reason of their sagacity and the good services which they rendered to all men, attained immortality, some of them having even been kings in Egypt. Their names, when translated, are in some cases the same as those of the celestial gods, while others have a distinct appellation, such as Helios, Cronos, and Rhea, and also the Zeus, who is called Ammon by some, and besides these, Hera and Hephaestus, also Hestia, and finally Hermes. Helios, Uranus or Neptune, was the first king of the Egyptians, his name being the same as that of the heavenly star. Osiris was the 4th ruler and the eldest son of Cronos, to reign after Cronos. Cronos reigned after Helios, and either Helios, after the heavenly star, was the first to rule, or the second to rule after Hephaestus, heavenly fire. Osiris was the first ruler to make mankind give up cannibalism, and created agriculture, when Isis had discovered wheat and barley, which grew in the wild. With an army, Osiris traveled the earth and civilized mankind. Isis was the first to establish laws that no man could change, and to punish the insolent. The Egyptians' Isis say, discovered many health-giving drugs and was generally versed in the science of healing. Hermes established religion. He was the first also to observe the orderly arrangement of the stars, created astronomy, and built stone calendars, and erected obelisks in order to track time and the seasons, and studied the harmony of the musical sounds. He also made a lyre with 3 strings, imitating the 3 seasons of the year, summer, winter, and spring. He also introduced wrestling, and the common language of mankind was first further articulated, and an alphabet was invented. This means that during the previous rule of Cronus and Helios, with the exception of possibly Hephaestus, and after the catastrophes that dissipated the red plasma sheath of the red-brown dwarf, mankind had been engaging in cannibalism, had laws, disease, religion, astronomy, measuring time, and the 3 seasons already existed. This does not sound like there could have been a golden age while Helios, Sol, or Cronus, Saturn reigned, if there ever was a golden age at all. And if Noah's flood came until later on, at the end of Horus' reign, son of Osiris and Isis, that means that things were already bad for mankind before the dethronement of Saturn by Zeus Jupiter. The first sun or star to shine was called Helios or Helios, named after the first or second ruler god. The first star seen after Earth exited the plasma sheath, due to entering the heliosphere, could have been also Uranus, as the star was not clearly visible but blurred by the thick ether plasma sheath or atmosphere of the red-brown dwarf. Instead, Uranus was perceived as a ball of fire and heavenly fire, which was also called Hephaestus, later called Vulcan by the Romans, and according to some was the first god to rule in Egypt, before Helios. Helios' father, according to Manetho's king's list of Egypt, was Hephaestus. According to Homer and Hesiod, Helios' father was Ouranos and Gaia. According to some historians, his parents were Hyperion, he who goes above and watches from above, and Theia, or Aethria, the shining ether of the sky, and the feminine form of ether, the plasma sheath of the egg of creation. It is possible that upon exiting the red plasma sheath, Uranus was seen brighter while going nova, and explains the worship of Isis soon after as the horned moon and sacred cow. Then, after the flood, the first ruler, Menes, or Menas, inscribed his curse in hieroglyphs on the temple of Zeus. This was probably due to Zeus causing catastrophes? From Apollonius Rhodius, Argonautica, a Greek epic. Quote, nondescript monsters, fitted with miscellaneous limbs, were once produced spontaneously by Gaia, Earth, out of the primeval mud, when she had not yet been solidified under a rainless sky, and was deriving no moisture from blazing Helios. Helios the sun, or Cronus, Saturn, god of time, combining this with that, brought the animal creation into order. End quote. We can see that Helios and Cronus are distinct stars. Diodorus Siculus, Library of History 5. Helios, the sun, the myth tells us, caused the water which had overflowed the earth to disappear. From Ovid, Metamorphoses, Book 1, quote, when, after the great deluge, Helus, who is the earth or Gaia, deep-coated with the slime of the late deluge, glowed again beneath the warm caress of shining Sol, the sun, or Helios. She brought forth countless species, some restored in ancient forms, some fashioned weird and new. From Nonnus, Dionysiaca. Cotton, the earth, milling out from Helios, the sun, the shine of his new made brightness upon her all-mothering breast, at the first dawn. The term Helios, or Helios, was also used to differentiate a star from other planets that Earth came across on her way to the Sun, such as from our current Sun Apollo, also called Shamash by the Chaldeans, but it was also syncretized with Saturn, but not Jupiter. In the War of the Titans, Titanomachy and Theogony, the original star Helios is a different and separate character than Cronos and Apollo. So they are different rulers or planets. During the turbulent period of revolutionary change at the end of the Roman Republic between 44 and 38 BC, during a close approach of Venus, Virgil also spoke of the Golden Age being set back to an idolized Arcadia in Greece, and that a new Golden Age of peace and justice was about to return. In Virgil's Eclogue, he mentions that a new race or breed will be sent down from heaven, with the return of Saturn's reign in the last age. This reminds me of the Anunnaki that came down from heaven and ruled over mankind. Similarly, in the Bible, the Elohim came down from El, Saturn or Helios. Heliopolis is the city of El. Helios is Helios. Helios denotes the sun or a star. Quote, "Now the last age by Kumai's Sibyl song has come and gone, and the majestic roll of circling centuries begins anew. Astrea, Virgo, returns all Saturn's reign, with a new breed of men sent down from the heaven." The end of the world was expected, and catastrophes, axis, and orbital changes to Earth or the Moon were caused by several comets or planets previous to or including the Great Comet of 44 BC. Julius Caesar, circa 48 BC and after the conquest of Egypt, was advised by astronomer Sociages to reform the calendar, which was adopted in 46 BC from the Alexandrian Aristarchus calendar, which had begun in 239 BC, where one solar year consisted of 12 months and 365 days, with an extra day added every 4 years. Sociages' calendar, installed in 48 BC, had two intercalations, one of 23 days following February 23rd, and the second, in order to bring the calendar in step with the equinoxes, inserted 2 additional months, one at the end of November and one at the beginning of December. The Roman year in 46 BC was 445 days long. 2 years later, the Great Comet of 44 BC, probably Venus, caused several catastrophes. Mount Etna erupted, pestilence spread, severe winter occurred, and orbital changes necessitated the revision and calculation of the equinoxes. So the Julian calendar was devised. The apotheosis of Julius Caesar, who claimed to descend from the terrestrial goddess Venus, through Aeneas of Troy, into the comet took place following Julius Caesar's assassination, when the Great Comet of 44 BC was seen across the sky for 6 nights. People were told that it was Caesar's spirit transformed, called ascension, from mortal to divine god-like status of an immortal star, as all previous rulers had done since the rule of Ouranos and Helios, thousands of years previously when civilization began. The comet planet seen, which is shown as the 8-pointed star of Venus in his temple called Temple of the Comet Star, from Pliny the Elder. Phanes and Aeon. In Orphism, as with many other mystery cults prevalent in the Greco-Roman world, whose beliefs originated from Indo-European religions, the creation and destruction of the world was cyclical. Initiation into its secret rites, together with ascetic practices, which was extreme self-denial, abstinence from sensual pleasures, or self-mortification, for religious reasons, was supposed to guarantee the individual soul release from the grievous cycle of reincarnation and mortality, and provide communion with the gods. Orphics sometimes identify the Golden Age with the era of the god Phanes, who was king over Olympus before Cronos. In classical mythology, however, the Golden Age was associated with the reign of Saturn. Phanes, or Ophion, was one of the primeval gods born of the cosmic watery abyss in the Orphic mystery school, means bringer of light, or shining one, or to shine. He gave birth to the other planets or gods and the universe, or the visible solar system. Phanes created the light of day, and his consort Nyx created night. Phanes passed on his scepter, denoting rulership, to Nyx, then to Ouranos, then to Cronos, Saturn, and then to Zeus, Jupiter. Phanes, or Helios, is born from the description of the Orphic egg, the primeval egg of creation that contained the earth was crushed by the forces of Kronos, Saturn, and the serpentine coils of Ananke, the plasma filaments and electrical discharges, CMEs or solar flares from Saturn, separating Earth from heaven, atmosphere or plasma sheath removal, and the sea from the current universe, natural forces that created the new world order after the Deluge. Sounds like the egg was the cocoon or plasma sheath of the red dwarf, now the gas giant Ouranos. That enveloped Earth with a reddish or pinkish thick atmosphere, also known as the primeval god Ether or Aether. That prevented the observation of the planets or stars of the firmament, and the infrared light spectrum allowed humans, animals, and plant life to grow to gigantic size, prevented aging and the growth of bacteria and viruses. The Orphic egg is usually represented as an egg surrounded by a coiled serpent. The egg symbolizes the belief in the Greek Orphic religion that the universe originated from within this silver egg. The first emanation from this egg, described in ancient hymn, was Phanes Dionysius, the personification of light. Quote, "Ineffable, hidden, brilliant Zion, whose motion is whirling, you scattered the dark mist that lay before your eyes, and flapping your wings, you whirled about, and through this world you brought pure light." End quote. The image that also depicts this personification of the god of light called Phanes being born is a naked young winged man holding a staff and the thunderbolt with a serpent wrapping his body, with the crescent moon behind his shoulders, with rays of light and an orb or a star on his head, with a lion's face on his solar plexus, surrounded by an egg-shaped oval with the 12 signs of the zodiac. Phanes, the primordial god protogenos of creation in the Orphic cosmogony, is equated to Eros, goddess of dawn, of Hesios' theogony. He was the generator of life, the driving force behind creation and reproduction in the early cosmos. Aristophanes also called Phanes Eros. He was born from an egg created by Nyx, night, and placed in the boundless lap of Erebus, personification of darkness, born of chaos, after which he mates with chaos and creates the flying creatures. Are these flying creatures the same as the winged lords, the cherubs of Mesopotamia, who represent the electrical charged planets and stars? From the library of Apollodorus. Ouranos, Uranus, sky, ruled over the whole world. When he wedded or captured or mated with Earth, it produced the 100-headed and-handed and the one-eyed Cyclops monsters. These were planets discharging plasma filaments. Their marriage was consummated when rain fell on Earth and fertilized her, creating new life forms, mutations from the flood caused by Uranus's micronova. Uranus sent the monsters, these planets, to Tartarus, a gloomy dark place in Hades, a faraway place in the outer solar system, away from Earth, further than the distance from Earth to Uranus' sky. Earth gave an adamantine, diamond-like sickle, which Kronos cut off Uranus' genitals and threw them into the seas, and from the drops of the red blood, probably the red rainfall, were born Aphrodite and others. Drops of blood impregnated Earth when they fell on her, but also tell of the separation captured by Saturn of Earth from Uranus. Aphrodite is the moon. Ouranos is the Greek personification of heaven. His parentage varies according to Hesiod's theogony. Gaia was his mother and no father, according to Tutanomachia. Ether and Gaia are the parents, according to Alcman. Parent was Acmon, according to Hyginus and Cicero. The parents were Ether and Hemera. According to the Orphic fragments, the mother was Nyx, night. According to the Orphic rhapsodies, an Epicurus fragment, he was born of the world egg cracked by Kronos and Ananke's serpentine force. He is called the abode of the gods. Does this mean the planet of the Anuna, lords, orbited Uranus? He is Aether, evolved into a divine consciousness. He is called the Panipartatus, daemon, the most exalted and highest divinity. According to the Darvani papyrus, Ouranos was the first to rule, referring to the lineage of the 6 Vasilei, or kings. He is following Phanes. is the first to rule because he is the first personal deity in the series. Thanis and Nyx being impersonal deities, Nyx preceded Ouranos and Thanis before Nyx. The sky and weather gods are named Theoi Ouranoioi or Theoi Meteoroi by the Greeks. Ouranos is one of these proto-genoi, or firstborn, the first being that emerged from the emptiness of chaos. Ouranos is the Greek word for heaven or firmament, and its Roman counterpart is Caelus. His hands rested upon the earth in the furthest east and feet in the furthest west. He was similar in form to the Egyptian goddess Nut or Nuit. He was the solid bronze dome, the plasma sheath of a red dwarf, with copper or golden color, or reddish color. He was the husband of Gaia, and he was the father of the Titans, with her before being conquered by his son, Cronos, and the other Titans. Etymology. From Hittite, Uvarsa, fog, mist. Sanskrit, Varsha, rain. Indo-European root uvers, to rain, moisten. Also found in Greek, erse, dew. Sanskrit, Varsati, to rain. In the Avestan, Varesta, Ouranos is a rainmaker. All these descriptions point to a flood being caused by Proto-Uranus. 2. The Golden Age. The Orphic school, a mystery cult that originated in Thrace and spread to Greece in the 5th century BC, held the beliefs about the early days of man, denominating the ages with metals. In common with the many other mystery cults prevalent in the Greco-Roman world and their Indo-European religions antecedents, the worldview of Orphism was cyclical, initiation into its secret rites, together with ascetic practices, was supposed to guarantee the individual soul eventual release from the grievous cycle of mortality and also a communion with gods, as we mentioned before. The Orphics sometimes identify the Golden Age with the era of the god Phanes, who was regent of Olympus before Cronos Saturn. Arcadia in Greece was said to be the site where the original Golden Age had been, where the herdsmen still lived on acorns, and where the goat-footed god Pan and his home among the poplars on Mount Menelaus. It is until classical mythology that the Golden Age was associated with the reign of Saturn. In the 5th century BC, the philosopher Empedocles, like Hesiod before him, emphasized the idea of primordial innocence and harmony in all nature, including human society, from which he maintained that there had been a steady deterioration until the present. Plato, in his Critolus, referred to an age of golden men, and also at some length on ages of man from Hesiod's works and days. The Roman poet Ovid simplified the concept by reducing the number of ages to 4: gold, bronze, silver, and iron. Ovid's poetry was likely the prime source for the transmission of the myth of the Golden Age. Apollodorus, without giving any ancestors, says simply that Uranus was the first who ruled the whole world. The Golden Age was applied to the reign of Cronos Saturn by Hesiod in Works and Days, which included 5 ages of decline: golden, silver, bronze, iron. Men lived like gods, without sorrow of heart, remote and free from toil and grief. Miserable age rested not on them, but with legs and arms never failing they made merry with feasting beyond the reach of all devils. When they died, it was as though they were overcome with sleep, and they had all good things, for the fruitful earth and forest bare them the fruit abundantly and without stint. They dwelt in ease and peace. Other concepts of Golden Age. The Brahma Kumaris and Pragyapita Brahma Kumaris make reference to 5 yuga, in a single cycle of 5,000 years, in which the Golden Age or Satya Yuga is the first and lasts for 1,250 years. 3 of the remaining 4, Treta Yuga, Silver Age, Dwapara Yuga, Copper Age, and Kali Yuga, the Iron Age, also last for 1,250 years each. The 5th age, Sangam Yuga, Confluence Age, is given to the last 100 years of the 4th age and represents the period when the Iron Age is destroyed and the next Golden Age is created. A Golden Age is a time when the human beings are full of all the divine virtues and have all the 7 qualities: peace, purity, love, wisdom, happiness, power, and bliss to the fullest. This chronology is more attuned to the chronologies given by the Hebrews and Masoretic text regarding the world ages, or creation of the world, as well as the king's list. This means the creation of the royal lineages of Adam and Eve by the Elohim and the time of the Garden of Eden took place about 7,500 years ago, or 1,656 years before Noah's flood, and the creation of the world from Noah's flood was circa 6,000 years ago, or 4,000 BC. Note that the Niturian calendar, followed by the Jews, began about 5,700 years ago, after the Deluge. In the Hindu Vedic traditions, alternating dark and golden ages have occurred: the Kali Yuga, the Iron Age, Dwapara Yuga, the Bronze Age, Treta Yuga, the Silver Age, and the Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, correspond to the 4 Greek ages. The Hindus believe that in the Krita Yuga, the Golden Age, men neither bought nor sold. There were no poor and no rich. There was no need to labor, because all the men required was obtained by the power of will. The chief virtue was the abandonment of all worldly desires. The Krita Yuga was without disease. There was no lessening within the years. There was no hatred nor vanity, or evil. All mankind could attain to supreme blessedness. 3. Roman god Janus. The little-known god of the Roman pantheon, known as Janus, or Yani, father of Zeus, and of the royal lineage of the Romans, is identical to the Sumerian lord An, or Anu, the Roman Caelus and Ouranos. Janus, the mythical sky or heavenly god, or Divum Deus in ancient Latin, was responsible for the Golden Age, which was later associated with Saturn in Greek and other world mythologies, for unknown reasons to the author. According to one myth, Janus was the first king of Latium, and is credited with bringing civil and social order to mankind. In doing so, he brought humanity from barbarity to civilization. He established a worship and religion. He was the first ruler to mint coins and use money. He is associated with trade, systems, and springs, with beginnings, endings, and transitions. Janus was worshipped as the sun, and one of his wives, Jana, was worshipped as the moon. Tamese, Jana, Moon, and Juturna were wives of Janus. Janus was the father of Tiberinus and Fontus, or Jupiter and Neptune. In other myths about Janus, Saturn, after being exiled by Jupiter from the heavens, after Saturn goes nova and Earth was captured by Jupiter, Saturn became smaller and more distant from heaven. Saturn arrived on a ship to the Janiculum, the domains of Janus, and the former place of Earth. The god was received warmly by Janus, and in return for his hospitality, bestowed on the king the power to see both into the future and into the past. The cult of and worship of the god Janus was very ancient and important in Rome. Januai. Before every sacrifice, he was invoked and received a libation. The oldest list of gods usually began with his name, and his portrait can be found on the oldest Roman coins. Janus' equivalent is the Greek god Ouranos, as described by ancient Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, and the Sumerian god An. The beginning of the day, month and year, both calendrical and agricultural, were sacred to him. The month of January is named after him, and his festival took place on January 9th, the Agonium. There were several important temples erected to Janus, and it is assumed that there was also an early cult on the Janiculum, which the ancients took to mean the city of the mountain, or dwelling place of Janus. Remember that these rulers lived on high altitude, atop mountains, to survive the floods. Janus is usually shown with 2 faces, one looking forward and the other backwards. Sometimes one face is clean-shaven and the other bearded. Occasionally he was depicted as 4-faced in the 4-way arch. He might hold a staff. His symbols are arches and gates of ancient walled cities, similar to the Torii, Shinto gates, which demarcate sacred space as opposed to ordinary space, and the Buddhist Hindu Torana, the gateway which marks the entrance to sacred space. Plutarch writes in his Life of Numa, "For these Janus in remote antiquity where he was a demigod or a king, was a patron of civil and social order, and is said to have lifted human life out of its bestial and savage state. For this reason he is represented with two faces, implying that he brought men's lives out of one sort and conditioned into another. Cato tells us that in the traditional rite purifying and blessing agricultural lands, that the first offering goes to Janus, likewise for the harvest rite. Quote, before harvest, address a prayer, with incense and wine to Janus, Jupiter and Juno, before offering the sow to Ceres. Make an offering of cakes to Janus, with these words, Father Janus, in offering these cakes, I humbly beg that you will be gracious and merciful to me and my children, my house and my household. Then make an offering of cake to Jupiter. Then present the wine to Janus, saying, Father Janus, as I prayed humbly in offering the cakes, will you do the same and be honored by this wine placed before ye? And then pray to Jupiter. Then offer up the sacrifice of the pig. When the entrails have been removed, make an offering of cakes to Janus, with a prayer as before, and an offering of a cake to Jupiter, with a prayer as before. After the same manner also offer wine to Janus, and offer wine to Jupiter, as was directed before the offering of the cakes, and to the consecration of the cake. Afterwards offer entrails and wine to Ceres. Cato on agriculture, end quote. Ovid in his fasting says, Janus is saying, quote, the ancients, since I'm a primitive thing, called me chaos. Watch me seeing events long ago. This loosened air and the other three elements, fire, water, and earth, were a single heap, once the dissension of its matter had split the mass, which departed in fragments for new homes. Flame headed for the heights, and next place took the air. Earth and the ocean settled in mid-ground. Then I, who had been a ball and faceless hulk, got the looks and limbs proper to a god. Now, as a small token of my once confused shape, my front and back appear identical. Whatever you see around, sky, ocean, clouds, earth, they are all closed and opened by my hand. The world's safekeeping belongs to me alone. Only I have the right to turn its hinge. I sit at heaven's doors with the gentle hours. Jupiter goes and comes through my office. Hence I am called Janus. My stronghold was the hill, which this age commonly calls the Janiculum. After my name, I reigned at the time when... Words missing. Human places were crammed with deities. Words missing. I watched keys and doorposts. These, he said, showing his key, are my weapons. Ovid, fasting. 1 January. Plutarch tells us that Janus is a patron of civil and social order, and Horace makes the nature of Janus clear when he calls him not only the beloved father of the morning, Satire 6, but also Janus, the guardian of peace, Epistle 1. The temple of Argiletum consisted of 2 arches or gates. The cold statue was between them. It was a very ancient statue, historian Pliny the Elder's Natural History mentions. It is proof that the sculptured art existed in Italy in the earliest times. The god was portrayed with 2 bearded heads. The fingers of his hands were placed in strange positions, which Pliny interpreted as an indication of the number 355, which he thought was a reference to the number of days of the oldest Roman calendar. In Virgil Aeneid, Epic of the Romans, Virgil explains the meaning of the ritual closing of the gates during war, also during Mars' close encounters with Earth, sacred custom in Latium, land of the West, continuously observed, and Rome, supreme in all the world, observes today when Romans first steer Mars to engage battle. The terrible iron-constricted gates of war shall shut, and safe within them shall stay the godless and ghastly lust of blood, propped on his pitiless piled armory, and still roaring gory mouth, but held fast by the 100 chains of bronze knotted behind his back. Reminds me of the Gordian knot. Virgil's contemporary and colleagues Ovid and Horace state exactly the opposite. It is peace that is kept inside the temple of Janus. Augustus also built an altar of peace in the time of the great comet of 9 BC. Was this Mars or Venus? Later emperors used the gate of Janus at the time of comet sightings. Nero's general Corbulo had defeated the Parthians. The ruler shot the doors in 66. Coins with the legend Peace Poplis Romanis Ubique Parta Janum Clusti He closed the gates of Janus when the Roman people everywhere enjoyed peace, were struck to commemorate this occasion. In 75 it was Vespasian's turn. The historian Eutropius informs us that Gordian III opened the doors in 241. The Romans worshipped Janus at the temple of the Argiletum, with the gates of war, Mars, and at the mountain of Janus, Ianiculum. During the reign of the Emperor Caesar Augustus, 27 BC to 14 CE, a comet was seen in 12 and 10 BC that came known as the Star of Bethlehem, and the end times were expected, and like Julius Caesar's, declare himself the Roman Messiah. Of the eagle's lineage, Yeshua was also another Jewish Messiah of the serpent's lineage, but interestingly the Roman Church chose Yeshua, their Messiah, instead of Julius Caesar. Why? Augustus Caesar, when probably Venus, Mars, or Halley's comet were seen over Rome in 10 and 12 BC, Augustus claimed it was the spirit of Julius Caesar, who was transformed into a star and god. If Caesar was a god, then, at his hair and of the same lineage, Augustus was the son of a god. In cultures of ancient times, as in Rome, it was accepted that political leaders like Aeneas, Romulus, and the Caesars were of the royal lineage of the ancient Greek human gods. The apotheosis of Augustus Caesar in the Belvedere altar in Rome depicts the star of the god Janus, Caelus, heaven, Uranus, and Augustus Caesar riding the chariot pulled by 4 horses, like Helios or Apollo. This is a statement of divine royal lineage coming from Uranus, Janus, and Apollo. I believe that the descriptions by ancient historians of Janus guarding and controlling the gates of heaven and controlling Jupiter's movements, meaning Jupiter was under the electromagnetic influence of Uranus' sheath, transition from one state of being to another, represented by Janus' 2 phases, is related to the ancient cosmic scenarios during 7,500 years ago, where Uranus, as Helios, was the first sun, a red dwarf without its sheath, that Earth orbited, and the ruler during the Golden Age, as stated by the ancient historians. Does it mean that Janus was identified with the sun and with light, the appearance of the moon and measuring time? 4. Ouranos equivalents in world mythologies. Ouranos was equivalent to Anu of the Sumerians, Anu of the Akkadians, and Yanu of the Roman pantheon. Yanu, the most ancient god from the Indo-European pantheon, was erased from the Greek pantheon. He was the god of the Golden Age, of beginnings, measurable time and seasons. He civilized the wild peoples within city walls, instituted religion, money, taxes, agriculture, etc. He controlled the gates of heaven, Jupiter's movements, and was worshipped as the sun, together with the moon, Yana. In Vedic and Shatapatha Brahman text, Prajapati was equivalent to Phanes of the Orphic myths, who was born from the golden cosmic egg. He alone, or together with the goddess of language, created heaven and earth. Prajapati became the sky, the earth, and the seasons. He created all the water and beings, the Devas, the demigods or divine beings, Asuras, and the Purusha, cosmic spirit. He was the chief and father of the gods, created religion, rites, and sacrifices, the Yajurveda. But in the most ancient Vedic literature, the Rig Veda, the god Vanua was Uranus, sky, who also represented the seas, Satya, as in Satyayug or Satyayuga, the time of the Deluge, and Rita, justice. Does this mean that the Yuga Satya of Uranus became syncretized with Saturn later on, same as in the classic Greek mythology? Surya later supplanted Brahma of the Hindus. Surya was the god, the sun god. Odin of the Norse, heavenly father of the Greek and father of all the gods. To the Sumerians, he inhabited the highest of the 3 heavens, said to be made of the reddish Luludanitu stone. Was this a reddish copper plasma sheath? The Mahabharata epic describes the planetary wars that occurred from 4000 BC until 1000 BC. Krishna died circa 1500 BC. Vyas states that some greenish-white Sweta planet had crossed Chitra Nakshatra. Nilakanta of 17th century also had the knowledge of Uranus or Sweta. Sweta means greenish-white. which was later discovered to be the color of Uranus. The Bhagavan Puran describes the eternal abode of Vishnu, Vaikuntha, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Quote, the inhabitants of the Vaikuntha planets are described as having a bluish color like blue glowing sky, and together appeared like the sky decorated with both clouds and lightning. End quote. Vishnu's avatars were the males of his lineage, who after their father represented the same planet or star. Helios, heavenly star, sun, the first Egyptian god to rule, could have been the same planet Earth was orbiting. Uranus, after Earth exited the red plasma sheath of the red-brown dwarf star. Read more about Helios in my ebook Helios, Earth's First Star. In the early days of the cosmos, when Ouranos, Uranus, heaven, and Gaia, Earth, had been driven apart by the Titans, Helios, the sun god, shone upon the earth for the first time, and from the warm, bubbling mud sprouted new life, plants and animals. Ouranos, in the Histories of Atlantis by Diodorus Siculus, tells of the ruler called Ouranos, Uranus, who foretold many planetary changes during his life, who civilized and ruled over the people of the planet, and when he died, his spirit was translated or ascended or transfigured onto the star Uranus, which was named after him. He was made king of the heavens and king of the universe, because he had deep knowledge of the way of the stars and planets. Tiamat, who was in the original Sumerian version of the Enuma Elish, the goddess of the salty sea, the brightly shining or glistening one, her salty waters mixed with Apsu's fresh waters of earth during the floods caused by Uranus and Saturn. Anshar and Kishar, heavenly father and earthly mother, are parents of Uranus, and an earth, Ki. Enlil separates Ki from An and carries Ki away with him. Saturn captured Earth from Uranus. In Egypt, the cult of Ankh of Anjou was the cult of the Sumerian lord An, whose spirit was translated and embodied by Ouranos, later represented by Saturn Kronos. The Sumerian Enuma Elish narrates the creation of the solar system. It speaks of brown dwarfs and planets that become highly electrified and disturbed by the close approach of the other planets' plasma sheaths and change their orbits. Sumerian texts refer to Enlil, Jupiter, or Saturn as a star instead of a planet. Enlil was replaced by Marduk in the late Babylonian version. Tiamat, meaning sea, was used by Berosus, or it could have its roots in Semitic Tehom, meaning the deeps or abyss. Apsu was the fresh waters from underground aquifers, wells, lakes, and springs on earth. Apsu's waters mingled or mixed with Tiamat's salty ocean waters and filled the earth with the primeval waters. Waters rich in salts and minerals and new kinds of life of the incoming novas. They birthed Ea, Neptune, Anshar and Kishar, heavenly father and earth mother, who became parents of Uranus, An, and earth, Ki. Enlil, Saturn in this story, separates Ki from Uranus and carries Ki away with him. Saturn captured the earth from Uranus, similarly to Kronos freeing the children, planets, from Uranus in Greek mythology. Could this mean that the red dwarf star known as Nibiru, or Niburu, means a star or planet that crossed Earth's orbit, which is referred to as a reddish star in Sumerian text, that while Saturn and Tiamat was Uranus' flood waters, and Earth and other planets stopped orbiting Uranus when Marduk, Nibiru, or Saturn captured them from Uranus? The splitting of Earth in two, heaven and earth, means that Earth got flooded and geologically split, earthquakes, chasms opened up, and the creation of mountains formed by the electrical discharges and supersonic winds after the Great Deluge. In the text, Gilgamesh, Enkidu, and the Netherworld describes the process of creation of the solar system. Namu, the primeval sea, existed first. Namu gave birth to An, Uranus, and Ki, Earth. An's seed, the rain expelled from Saturn's nova, filled with new genetic material and building blocks, fell on Earth, Ki, and impregnated her, creating all the vegetation. Enlil, Saturn, and later Jupiter, was also born and captured Earth in his domains, while An carried off the sky. The plasma sheath of the red dwarf that Earth was surrounded by when it orbited Uranus disappeared as a result of the nova, and the atmosphere changes and the stars became visible. The Sumerians believed that until Enlil was born, Uranus and Earth were inseparable. Does this mean Earth was originally a satellite of Uranus? Then Enlil separated Uranus, heaven, from Earth. Jupiter carried away or captured Earth, and Uranus carried away the heavens. Earth exited the plasma sheath of the red dwarf. Castration was used to explain the ruling star lost its planets that were captured by another star. The Hittite creation myth later became the basis for the Greek creation story described in the long poem Theogony, written during the 7th century BC by Hesiod. The Hittite story of kingship in heaven says that 3 gods ruled heaven: Alalu, Neptune, from the city of Ulkesh, Anu, Uranus, and Alalu's son Kumarbi, Saturn. In Hittite mythology, Anu overthrows his half-brother, Alalu, and proclaimed himself ruler of the universe. Anu is later overthrown by Alalu's son Kumarbi. Anu attempts to flee, but Kumarbi bites off Anu's genitals and swallows them. Kumarbi then banishes Anu to the underworld, Tartarus of the Greeks, along with his allies, the old Titan gods Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, and Pluto, whom the Hittites syncretized with the Anunnaki. As a consequence of swallowing Anu's Uranus genitals, Kumarbi, Kronos, Saturn, becomes impregnated with Anu's son Teshub, Jupiter, and 4 other offspring, other planets. After he grows to maturity, Teshub overthrows Kumarbi, thus avenging his father Anu's dethronement and mutilation. Similarly, the Greek primeval sky god Ouranos is overthrown and castrated by his son Kronos. Kronos is then in turn overthrown by his own son Zeus. In one Orphic myth, Kronos bites off Uranus' genitals in exactly the same manner that Kumarbi does to Anu. Alalu was a king in heaven, seated in the throne. The throne could mean that he is a dominant star or red dwarf Earth orbits at a specific time. For 9 shars, or lunar orbits, Anu, Uranus, battles Alalu. Uranus Anu overthrows Alalu and proclaims himself ruler of the universe. Anu was king for 9 shars. Uranus captured the planet during 9 periods or orbits. Kumarbi Saturn battles Uranus Anu and ate his genitals, loins. Saturn's interactions with Uranus caused Saturn to capture the planets that orbited Uranus. Uranus Anu managed to fly back to his heavenly abode. Means that Uranus retreated to a distant place in space after the interactions with Saturn and possibly after going nova. Kumarbi controlled Earth only for a short time. Saturn captured Earth only for a short time.